Välkommen alla sammen. Welcome to the channel where we use the historical sources to speak about Norse paganism, and today is very important. We are speaking about Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, and its true meaning as to what it really represents. So, again, if you watch my channel, our ancestors did not believe in all these crazy myths that we find in Norse mythology, that they think that they were actual events that happened. They didn't believe that Thor was some superhuman-like being that travels all around the world and beats the crap out of people with his hammer and travels around with his ghost and all of that stuff. No. All of our myths represent something else, something in nature, the universe, our spirit, things like that. And the way our myths and poetry are written is with something called kenningar, which is basically metaphors, and our myths are filled with metaphors and symbolism and hidden meanings. It's the beautiful part about our religious texts, but it's also its greatest weakness, because these complex and elusive myths make it very easy for the church to come in and convert people like they did 1,000 years ago, and it was very easy for the meaning of these myths to be lost. But some great scholars and historians are bringing it back today, so I'm going to speak a little bit about what they have uncovered. Now, in some of the other videos I make about these things, there is some debate about what different gods and items and creatures in the Norse myths mean, but Mjolnir is pretty easy. There's a pretty general agreement among the experts, and it's that it represents the heart or heartbeat or source of power in humans and all other aspects of life. But it's not quite that simple. So I'm going to tell you exactly how and what we mean. And in all of my videos, we look at the translation, attestations, and theories. So here we go. It's a bit of a long video. If you want to fast forward to the true meaning of Mjolnir, to go ahead, that's at the end. But I really recommend you watch the whole video, because this is a key symbol in our religion, and there are millions of people that get this tattooed and wear this as a necklace, and they have no idea what it means. So here we go, translation and etymology. It comes from a much, much older Proto-Germanic word, Mjolnir, meaning grinder or crusher. However, historians think that Mjolnir is rooted in much older times, and that is because we have very similar words in different languages in Europe and elsewhere, meaning all similar things, like you see here. Now, all of these words have to do with either lightning or an actual weapon of a storm god from other mythologies. So this word could have incredibly ancient roots going back all to the time while we were speaking the same language, the Indo-European people, 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. So that's Mjolnir and the original translation of that. However, in our myths, Mjolnir is not always called Mjolnir. A lot of the time it's just referred to as Hamar, Old Norse Hamar, which basically meant stone or rock. So, of course, with all of this, we can see that originally Mjolnir wasn't just a hammer at all, but it was probably just a rock, or even specifically a grindstone, possibly. If we go all the way back in times, maybe it was dated to all the way when humans didn't have hammers, they just used rocks, like we see here. So that is the translation. Let's get on to the attestations, the mentions of Mjolnir or Hamar in the ancient texts. Well, it comes in the Prose Edda, Gylfangning, and Skaldskaparmal, also in the Poetic Edda, Thrimskvida, Harbardsljóð, Lokasena, Alvismal. So Mjolnir is mentioned quite a few times in the ancient texts, but I'm not going to go over all of them because it's going to take too long, but I'm going to go over the two that really give us the most detail and speak about Mjolnir in depth, where we can really learn something. So Thrimskvida first. Most of you know this myth. The giant Thrymr steals Thor's hammer and says he will give it back, but only if he can keep Freyja as a wife. So Mjolnir and Freyja are two of the most important things that the gods possess, and they can't afford to lose either one of them. So Loki comes up with the idea that Thor should dress up as Freyja and go and marry the giant, Thrymr. So Thor doesn't want to do this, of course. He doesn't want to dress up like a woman, but he ends up doing it anyway. And him and Loki go to the giant, and right before the wedding, the hammer gets pulled out and Thor takes it and beats the crap out of everyone else there. that is the story that is Thrymskvida. The other story that I'll tell is how the gods and Thor came to receive Mjolnir, and it comes in the Prose at a Skaldskapamal section. So this is a really quick summary of the story to save time. I'm not going to go into it all. Loki does something to piss off the gods as usual. He cuts Thor's wife's hair off, Siv's hair. Then Thor threatens him, and Loki says, okay, don't hurt me, I'll make up for it. So then he goes to the dwarves and makes a bet with them, and he has them make some valuable items. And those 3 items were Gullinbursti, which was a pig with a golden mane and bristles. That was the ring, Draupnir, the ring that creates 8 new magical rings every 9 nights. And then it was Mjolnir, that was the 3rd gift, Thor's hammer, the most powerful weapon in the universe. However, the hammer had one weakness, and that is that it had a short shaft. So that's it for the literature, that's all I'll say there, but I will say 2 more things about Mjolnir before I tell you exactly what it means. First, Mjolnir was not just a weapon. More than anything, Thor's hammer was used kind of as a blessing. We actually have records of it being used in ancient ceremonies like marriage or birth to bless the couple with a healthy child. Late on in the Viking Age, it was used as a necklace, like we see in a lot of these amulets found in archaeological digs, but originally it was used as at these ceremonies as the fertility blessing. We see a very, very old example of it here in this runestone, and showing exactly this dates to before the Viking Age even. The second thing I'll say about Mjolnir is about all the archaeological stuff. We find it on a lot of runestones, and I'm showing you a few images here. And we also find these amulets. There's not too many, only about 70 to 80 of them have been found in total. Most of these come from quite late in the Viking Age when Christianity came in, so most of the scholars think that these amulets were used as necklaces in response to the Christian cross. However, much earlier on in time, the Germanic tribe, the Alemanni, was recorded as using a stone-like amulet that we have records of being a lot like the Roman or Greek Hercules and his club. We find a lot of these around different parts of Europe as an amulet. So here we go, it's this idea of a rock again, linked to that. And you can see how similar all of our European beliefs were if we go far back in time. Thor was Hercules, the parallel in the Norse world. So that's it for the attestations and mentions of Mjolnir. Let's get on to the theories. Now, like I said, in all of my other videos, this is the section where I cover theories from various scholars as to what things in our religion represent. But for Mjolnir, there is really only one theory in the community that makes perfect sense, and that is that Mjolnir represents the heart, or the heartbeat. Why? Well, it's in all the myths. First of all, you got to understand what Thor represents. That's the most important part. So Thor, of course, we know represents thunder, but also power, energy, even electricity, some people have suggested. We think our ancestors had some understanding of that, this idea of electricity and energy. But more importantly, Thor represents the energy and the life force in all living things. It's a lot more complicated than that, and I'm going to make a full long video about Thor very soon, but for now, just bear with me. This idea of Thor representing power and energy in living things. Just like Thor is powerless without his hammer Mjolnir, our bodies have no power and we have no life force without our heartbeat. And look at what the myths say about how we came to receive Mjolnir. This is very important. The gods got these things very early in the myth chronology, before they got any other things really. The dwarves made for the gods Gullinbursti, which is a little pig with golden peach fuzz. Draupnir, the magic ring that drips 8 more rings, and Mjolnir, their strongest weapon and source of power. So there is no coincidence that these gods get these 3 things together in the myths at the same time. So what happens to us before we were born? Well, we're just a fetus. We're just a little peach fuzzy pig looking thing, just like this, like you can see here. That is what Gyllenbusti represents. Then we get our heartbeat, Mjolnir, at the exact same time. Then we get our spirit and our soul, and that is what Draupnir is. It's the soul ring. Draupnir and the rings that it drips from it, that's what it's directly translated to, the dripper. The 8 rings that come from Draupnir, and those are rings that are all called along with the translation to English listed here on the screen, so you can take a look at. These are all the different aspects of our soul, all the names of the different rings that Draupnir drops. In the Christian belief, we have only 2 aspects to ourselves. We have our body and we have our soul. But in the Old Norse belief, we have 8, which is all of these things here that we receive at the same time when we are in our mother's womb. So it makes perfect sense that when we got Mjolnir, it was paired with 2 other things when the gods got those. Mjolnir is what powers our body and our spirit. And what is the original direct translation of Mjolnir? Stone. What else in nature looks like a stone? Well, our hearts kind of look like a stone. What is the only weakness that Mjolnir is said to have? Well, it's supposed to have a short staff, just like our hearts have a short lifeline. And as I mentioned earlier, this aspect of a stone as the hammer and the source of power is found all over in different European mythology. Like I said, it probably goes all the way back to a time where we used stones as hammers, and to a time where we were all one people, possibly 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Perhaps there is even a dual meaning to this metaphor, or this kenning, the art of hammering, like you keep pounding on something, just pounding like your heart beats. Your heart is pounding, your heart is beating just like a hammer. And this beat also it sounds a little bit like thunder, doesn't it? It's very possible that in very old times that humans thought that thunder and lightning, the sound of thunder, was part of the process of the earth gaining its power, the power being pumped and hammered into the earth, just like our heart pumps and fuels our body, that gives us our life force. Don't know, that's just a theory, but it's possible. What else can we say about Thor's hammer? What is it associated with? Well, it was used for a blessing, for marriage and birth. It was associated with fertility and health, as we have seen in the sources. It was a blessing to give heartbeat and power for the new life to come. And what is the poem Thrimskvida about? It's about Thor losing his hammer. It's about us losing our heartbeat and our life force. It's a poem about dying, and it's a poem about birth. Just like in the poem Thrimskvida, Thor has to become a hermaphrodite and dress up like Freya to get his hammer back. Freya was not just the hottest goddess, and she was not the most beloved goddess and the goddess of fertility. She is a metaphorical symbol for all woman. She is a symbol for female kind. We see this in Heimskringla, and this is where the word Frau or Fräulein comes from in German, and also the Scandinavian Fru, meaning woman or miss. You can read all about it, like I said, in Heimskringla by Snorri, a very, very old book from medieval times. It speaks about the origins of the gods and our traditions. So just like Thor, we all have to become gender neutral again in order to be reborn. We are nothing but a sperm cell just trying to get to the egg, and we need to get there before we are able to receive our heartbeat. So before we receive our Mjolnir and Thor, our life force, we have to basically disguise ourselves in female's clothing. That is what the egg is, just like Thor does. Now, it's very important, I'm finishing up here, and I don't want you to think of Mjolnir as just simply our human heart, because that's the wrong idea completely. Mjolnir is not just a heart, it's the driving power of all life. It's the driving power of humans and animals. We have hearts, but it's also the driving power of other living things, trees, plants, other things that are living. They don't have a heart, and their life force comes from something else, of course. So you just have to be aware that our ancestors had a very different state of mind thinking about these things. Of course, they did not have the knowledge we do today about the heartbeat and the electric waves and our nerves going through our body. They didn't have knowledge about the Earth's electromagnetic field and how thunder and lightning is made. But they knew a lot of things. All they had was their senses and what they could learn from observing the world, and that was what our myths are there to explain. Now, people ask me, because, the gods, just represent different things in nature, does that make our ancestors atheists, since the myths and gods were just representative of different things? And, is it true that they didn't believe in gods in the traditional sense? Does that make them atheist? Hell no. If anything at all, that makes them even more spiritual, even more religious. Yeah, they didn't believe in some superhuman gods running around the universe like the myths. They didn't believe that they were actually literal events, but they had some serious other spiritual beliefs, and they believed in many other supernatural things, different dimensions, realms. They believed in all kinds of different spirits and energy around us. They believed in different afterlives, magic, rituals, all these kinds of things. And that's about it. That's all I'll say about this video. Mjolnir, just keep in mind, this is generally agreed upon theory. I mean, we don't exactly have an ancient text that spells it out for us clearly, like Mjolnir equals the human heartbeat. No, this is not how our myths were written down. So we have to interpret these things and look at it in a logical way. So at the end of the day, even though this makes a lot of sense, it is all theories, and anyone's theory is just as good. So if you guys have any different ideas about Mjolnir and what it might be, if it doesn't represent the human heart, please let us know. That's why I make these videos, because there are a lot of experts looking at these things, but we do need more experts looking at these things, and the more intelligent people we have looking at this, like you guys watching this video, the better chances we have of really discovering what our ancestors believed in. So let us know in the comments if you have any good ideas, interpretations about this thing, but that's about it for today. Vi ses nästa gång.